2026, year of apostasy, year of great sellouts, right? And by all means, this is what Yahushua was talking about. Being a worker of iniquity. And what's that? That's someone that's heard this truth, someone that used to run with this truth, right? Because he goes into further details in the book of Matthew, is that he said that it would have been better to have not known me than it would have to have known me and turned away. It's starting to teach heresy, starting to teach falsehoods, right? Taking bribes, etc., right? Hey, man, this has been the year of all that, right? Those false teachers have come out more so this year than any other year, yet prophecy is unfolding, right? And they're found out to be false, right? Because they can't even tell you what the MOTB is. Shalom, first and foremost, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Rakal Kadash, double honors, the elders and apostles, a great millstone, where it teaches the truth and sincerity. And shout out to Yakims out there in the four quarters of the earth to claim this truth. Barak the Yahweh, Barak the Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Rakal Kadash, Brakatem. So, by all means, Workers of Iniquity quite describes what the title of this year is called, because you would have to have known this truth and deliberately went against it, deliberately becoming a worker of iniquity, pretty much. That because you're going to claim all these things, right? You're going to claim to have prophesied in thy name. You're going to claim to have taught all these things. So let the brother teach it, man. And you're going to see a lot of things are unfolding, right? Because we never left prophecy. No. No, prophecy is unveiling. And you're going to find out who a true prophet has been and who has been a false teacher. Because this is the year of it.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Makapadash. No honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples for young fellas. And peace and blessings and salutation to the whole flag out there pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across before winds in the name of Yahweh, Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Makapadash, pushing to get up out there. Shalom to the whole flag, the believers, the listeners, whom have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh, Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shai. All right, and what I want to go into is a lesson going into depart from me. Okay, because you had this Jay, came to the camp this past weekend, and he was under the impression, that there was a hell, and he was all over the place with them Jakes. He thought, they thought he knew everything, was coming up as if he was sincere asking questions, but he was really, trying to, stump the doctrine, because you can tell that he's been listening to different camps, he has a feel for the camps, so he came up like he was sincere, but, how Jake do, think they know every goddamn thing and ask these questions, which is supposed to stump us, but we went into it, but I want to go into it a little more when you go into the book of Matthew chapter 7 and 21. All right. Now, when you read it, says, not everyone, it's Matthew 7 and 21, it says, not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father, which is in heaven. Okay, because you have a lot of false teachers. There's a lot of men that can verbalize, the name of Yahweh Ba'Shem Al-Shai. Okay, they can acknowledge the name. All right, but their doctrine is off. Okay, their intent is off. Okay, a lot of these guys are sold out. Okay, so there's gonna be a lot of men, that can verbalize the name, but they ain't right. Okay, and we're seeing it more and more in these latter days as the Lord is causing judgment already to happen on these men that ain't right. Okay, they can verbalize the name, but they don't really acknowledge their name. They don't really, believe in those names. They don't, because coming in their name is coming back to a conduct and an expectation. You see, just being able to verbalize the name doesn't put you in the clear. No, being able to verbalize the name and knowing the name, okay, is a first step. Okay, but then there's a conduct and an expectation. There's a discipline. There's a commitment. Okay, that goes along with their name. Okay. Verse 22 says, many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, we have prophesied in thy name, and we cast out devils, and in thy name done many wondrous works. Okay, because these men, they've been teaching, they say things that are edifying, they make points. Okay, they can put you in the vicinity, okay, of salvation. Certain men that have left these camps and come to, GMS, and even if you don't come to GMS, man, but you separate from these false camps and really come into the truth and the understanding, because these men are able to edify to some degree, so they're able to get demons off people by teaching them the truth, okay, because this world infests you with demons. The truth and its understanding remove demons, so these guys come with these partial truths, they do, at least, to some extent, some of their congregation, is able to begin to be healed from this world, Okay, the Lord will, there's an elect amongst these other groups that are going to continue to come into the true understanding, that's going to fully come in. Okay, but these guys think because they get, just praise, they get the money, they made themselves a celebrity on YouTube, from the ministry, that they think that they're in the clear. They think that they're in good standards, man. Okay, but the Lord has them deceived. They're delusional. Okay, it says, and then will I profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. Now, Jake read this account, and he was saying depart as if that meant the Lord was sending them to hell. Okay, which we'll touch on. We got plenty videos going into hell, but the Spirit might have us to go into that as well on another lesson, but let's deal with this, and then will I profess unto them, I never knew you. Yeah, because you guys that aren't in the right spirit, the Lord is not going to know you in that time. You're not going to come under the banner of the protection of Yahweh Shai in the time of judgment. Okay, you're going to be left out there to deal with the wrath of the Lord. Okay, he says, depart from me, ye that work iniquity. Now, when you go into this word depart, okay, so let's go into this word depart. When you go into this root word here, apple, okay, apple.
Strong's G 575. Apa.
Okay, it says a separation of a part from a whole. Okay, a separation from a part from a whole, of any kind of separation of one thing from another, by which the union of friendship of the two is destroyed. A state of separation that is of distance. You see? So when Yahweh Shah says depart from me, because there's a separation of the 1/3 and the 2/3, and there's a lot of people that know that they're Israelites, that they're part of the 2/3, and in the time of judgment, the Lord's going to make that separation. That's going to be the Lord saying depart from me. There's going to be a separation. Okay, and you Israelites that ain't right, okay, you're going to get lumped up in the category with the 2/3. The Lord's going to make a separation. Okay, he's going to end the union. You see, and leave you to be destroyed. Okay, that's why even when you go here to this account, when you go to 2 Kings chapter 2 verse 9, this was Elijah was getting ready to get beamed up in the chariot, and Elisha was there. Okay, so this is their last dialogue before Elijah is taken in the chariot. 2 Kings 2 and 9 says, and it came to pass when they were gone over that Elijah said unto Elisha, ask what I shall do for thee before I be taken away from thee. Then Elisha said, I pray thee, let a double portion of thy spirit be upon me. And he said, thou hast asked a hard thing. Nevertheless, if thou see me when I am taken from thee, it shall be so unto you. Yeah, it should be so unto thee, but if not, it shall not be so. And it came to pass as they still went on and talked, there appeared therefore a chariot, you see that, of fire, and horses of fire. Okay, so this is a chariot, this is a group of chariots. Okay, and Elijah's going to take away one of these chariots. Okay, the lights on the chariot is being described as fire. Okay, and then the horses, which is multiple chariots. Okay, around his main chariot. You see, it looked like a horse. It looked like a group of horses carrying the chariot. This is how they describe it, but it's multiple chariots. Okay, and one chariot was a little bigger than the rest. Okay, and it says, and parted them both asunder. Wait a minute, and parted them both asunder, and Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. Okay, so it said it parted them both asunder. So that beam that came out the chariot, it separated Elijah from Elisha. Okay, and in these last days, those beams from those chariots are going to deliver the elect. It's going to separate 1/3 from the 2/3. 2/3 is going to be left, to get their destruction. And that's going to be how Shah saying depart from me. Now we know Elisha is part of the elect, but just giving an example of the separation that the chariot made by beaming up Elijah. Okay, and that's how it's going to be for the 1/3 and 2/3 in the last days. You read in verse 11, as they was walking along and talking, suddenly a chariot of fire appeared, drawn by horses of fire. It drove between the two men, separated them. Okay, and Elijah was carried by a whirlwind into heaven. Okay, so this depart from me. It's going to be the Lord separating the 1/3 from the 2/3 by the deliverance. See how Shah is coming with. Okay, and these jakes that ain't right know that the Israelites going to be bumped up with the 2/3. It's going to be how Shah saying depart from me. Okay, that's why when you go here to Zechariah, Zechariah 13. Okay, Zechariah 13 and 8. And it shall come to pass that in all the land, said the Lord, 2 parts therein shall be cut off and die. It's 2/3. They cut off. You see, that's separation. You cut something where you separate it. But the third shall be left therein, which they're going to survive. Okay? It says, and I will bring the third part through the fire. Okay? So when you go here, I want to get this word cut. Okay? That's what I want to do before I go on. Shall cut off. And the Hebrew word is karat. Karath. Okay, in the Hebrew, karath. And it says to cut off, to cut down. Okay, it says to cut out, to eliminate, to kill. You see? All right, the word korah. You see? To cut off body part. All right, now it says, there's one definition I wanted. It says to cut off, to destroy, to cut down, to destroy, to permit to perish, to allow someone to perish or be destroyed. Okay? So you niggas that ain't right, that know you Israelites, and you nigga women that know you Israelites, that ain't right. The Lord's going to tell you to depart from it. He's going to cut you away to be destroyed. Okay? He's going to permit you to be, all right, caught up in his destruction.
And that's why we've often said the Most High is going to kill your ass. Okay? We ain't exaggerating. This is exactly what the words say. It's right there. You know? Cut off. To kill. You get rid of. You don't want to fall into that. I'd rather be chastised. I'd rather be rebuked than to actually face Yahweh Shai in that day and for him to kill me at the end of it. You know, because I wasn't right. You know, I'd rather be rebuked now than for that to come up. And that's why we are a bit harsh. You know, that's why we take heed to it, you know, and we teach the way we do. We don't want to see anybody cut off who had a chance, right? You know, we want you to make it, you know. If you are if you're truly in this, but if you're a worker of iniquity, there's this point where, yeah, cut it off, man.
Okay? That still depart from me, you workers of iniquity, man. You see, and it says, verse 9, so I will bring the third part through the fire, okay, which is the Lord's anger, and will refine them as silver is refined, and will try them as gold, and they shall call on my name, and I will hear them, and I will say, it is my people, and they shall say, the Lord Yahweh Hashem Shai is my power. Okay, so there's a remnant that the Lord, all right, is going to accept. Okay, he's going to bring them up in the chariot. That's the Lord accepting his remnant, accepting his bride. Okay, but then there's 2/3 are going to be rejected. Okay, and they're going to be permitted to deal with his judgment. Okay, the Lord's going to permit them to have to deal with his judgment. They're going to be cut off to be destroyed. Okay, they're not going up on chariots, man. Okay, that's the Lord saying, depart from me, you workers of iniquity. I never knew you, man. All right, because you were BSing, man. You were never sincere. You see, and the Most High going to lump you niggas to 2/3. Okay, and let the missiles hit your ass, man. You know, so that's the point. Just want to go into that Lord will, you brothers. All right, and you feel so satisfied. Till next time, I say shalom. Kwam Yashalom. Abba, son, shalom.
And so that's where we're at, you know. 2/3 would be cut off of that day, but wait, there's more, right? You know, this war just goes on and on and on, right? You know, and there seems to be no end in it, right? No end in sight. You know, the Israeli state continuing to take land in both Lebanon and Syria, yet, you know, the U.S. Senate hands blank check for more war. You know, so we get into that a little bit, you know. Because like everything else, though, Amalek is drawing everybody into this third world war that's coming quickly. And this guy has been right on about a lot of things, man. But, you know, who controls everything? Just like Jimmy Dore, man. Stu Peters has been on top of it, you know. And he calls a Zionist, and that this whole thing is run by Amalek, at least the flock. And guess what? You know, the Memorandum of Understanding is a joke. In fact, I believe that Trump is already fired back at Iran because of a so-called drone strike, you know, because these ships did not have clearance from, you know, the IRGC to cross through the strait, and, yeah, they came under fire, you know, so Trump supposedly retaliated, you know, so where's the ceasefire? It ain't there, it'll never be there. It's a joke, and he's going to get into it.
Well, if you believe that Donald Trump was negotiating with the Iranians, if you believe the Memorandum of Understanding peace deal narrative that was coming out of the White House and their propagandists across cable news all week, you probably should have known better, because a peace deal just isn't going to happen. Because Israel will not allow it to happen. Instead, not just Iran, but now the entire Middle East is on the verge of bursting into flames. And current indications are that as Israel continues its war march through Lebanon, the so-called Syrian military, which is really the CIA Mossad-trained ISIS, are massing near the Lebanese border, ready to go in and assist the Israelis in committing genocide of Christians and Muslims alike. And for the Israelis, they're already doing quite a bit of killing. Over the past 3 months alone, more than 4,000 Lebanese civilians have been killed. Recently, Israeli drones have been dropping grenades on Lebanese kids. And this is just the beginning. Benjamin Netanyahu has told us that himself, announcing that Israel has seized land in Lebanon, will continue seizing land in Lebanon, and for good measure, they're taking another chunk of Syria, too.
We have established deep security zones around the state of Israel. We did this in Gaza and Lebanon and Syria, where, by the way, we destroyed all the weapons of Assad's army, which was a central link in the axis of evil. And I want to make it clear, we will remain in the security
the only
zones
one
as long
that's
as it
evil.
takes to protect our country.
Yeah, I mean, that shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone when you consider who we're dealing with here. I mean, we're talking about a bunch of psychopath war criminals who love death more than they love life. In fact, so much so that when they executed their October 7th false flag, the Israelis, as they love to call themselves, carried out strikes on their own people. They carried out strikes on their own communities, even their own military bases. Israeli eyewitnesses and participants have been blowing the whistle on this since shortly after it happened. And Israeli military officers, like the one in the clip that we're about to air, admitted to the Israeli media that they had killed their own people.
But why is the destruction then? I'm sorry, why did it destruction? Looks like it was because of our tanks attack.
Fight on them.
Yeah, because they were blocked in these houses, and we need to conquer back all settlements, and it wouldn't be happening without the tanks.
Okay.
So how many were here, and how many survived? How many did you
No one survived from this house. From other buildings, we rescued many. But from this house, 19 people died, among them 8 children.
Yeah, we killed 19 people in that house, including 8 children. What does that guy care about killing Palestinians or Lebanese people or anyone else for that matter? He doesn't. He will call in strikes. He will carry out strikes on settlements full of his own fake country's citizens, and then he just casually talks about it on TV. Because all of this is all part of normal everyday life for these people. They are psychopathic. So much so that, again, they have their own term for wiping out their own people, the Hannibal Directive. And for that matter, they have their own term for wiping out the rest of the world, too. The Samson option.
Israel's existence is not negotiable. And it does not depend on superpowers or the public opinion. And if they keep pushing Israel to the corner, they are the ones who are going to suffer most. Israel hasn't used everything that it has. And Israel, on a purpose, did not expose the advanced weapons that it has for a very important reason. We don't want the enemy to know what we are having. And now, at this point, we're just playing around. So, this is the clear message to those who think that they can emulate Israel. Behind Israel is existence, is the creator. Israel is not coincidental. I try not to, sorry for the long answer, please.
No, that's fine.
I try not to use God, because God could mean anything for anybody. But if they think the Israeli survival, 5,000 years, is coincidental, they need to rethink.
You're not the real Israelites.
They're telegraphing their punches to the rest of the world. They are ready, willing, able. They are more than happy to just start killing people en masse, including Americans, because they are members of a death cult.
Yeah, it's called Zionism, the
Israel's
New World
continued
Order.
obstruction of any fake peace deals being negotiated with the Iranians. Now the U.S. Senate has flipped the script, and I mean that literally, on their War Powers Resolution vote, in which, following the House's lead, they were poised to take back legislative control of the United States military and the ability to use that military to wage war. Well, then all of a sudden things changed. Votes changed.
Yep.
Suddenly, the Senate blocked the War Powers Resolution and continued giving Trump a blank, illegal check to fight wars for Israel that the American people don't want.
And that's where we're at, you know. And we said it before, we'll say it again, that this memorandum of understanding is a complete fluke, and it ain't going to hold. But wait, there's more, right? And there's a video at the end of this that brother put through, but man, earthquakes in diverse places, man, that's another thing that Yahushua talked about in this same book, you know, that many people come to me on that day, you know, saying I've done all these great things, and I will say, depart from me, you workers of iniquity, for I never knew you, right? You know, you had a chance, you had a chance to repent, and you did do a lot of things, but then you took a bribe, you, for whatever reasons that you did it, you strayed, and you had went and taught falsehoods, or you just quit, quite simply put, that turned away completely. But then you expect to be rewarded for that. You know, when the day of destruction comes, you still expect to be spared, even though you took your ball and you went home. Thousands fear dead after back-to-back earthquakes hit Venezuela, which believed to be a direct energy weapon, but nonetheless, though, this is what's happened. At least 235 people have been confirmed dead and 4,300 injured after two powerful back-to-back earthquakes struck Venezuela's northern Caribbean coast, causing widespread destruction in the capital and several other regions. Rescue teams continue to search through the rubble for survivors as aftershocks shake the affected areas, and so this is currently ongoing, just like the one you've seen in Syria and Turkey. This is a huge one. The first quake measuring magnitude 7.2, followed by less than a minute stronger 7.5 tremor, and they were hit heavy with this. See, the Most High is flushing out the 2/3, straight out. He's letting Esau have his way with him. In first Ashura, since leader's assassination, Iran vows never to forget or forgive. And why should they? The fact is, though, is that this was done, as a surprise attack while he was in his place, just totally bombed. And like everything else, they thought that that would cripple Iran by killing him. And all it did is actually it reunited them. President Pishkin said Ashura embodies Imam Hussein's enduring call to resist oppression, while Foreign Minister Agashi paid tribute to the late leader of the Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah Khamenei, describing him as the master of martyrs of the Islamic Revolution of Iran. What it is, unified. Everybody's in unison with them, and they want revenge. And that's why, more than anything else, though, they are looking to punish Babylon for what they've done, and the Zionist entity that runs Babylon, better known as the least of flock. Millions of mourners across Iran marked Ashura on Thursday. Ashura, the 10th day of the lunar month of Muharram, ceremonies of the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, the third Shia Imam and the grandson of Prophet Muhammad, whose sacrifice in the Battle of Karbala in 680 AD has become an enduring symbol of the struggle for justice against tyranny. So, like everything else, though, they're in unison, and as they should be, right? Because that's what happens when you attack a leader. See, they want war. Esau's a man of war. The Most High is a man of war, so he uses Esau to do it, right? Because like everything else, though, once we get the kingdom, though, there'll be no more wars. All those days are gone, but we're not in the kingdom yet, so the Third World War is coming quickly. Iran disputes U.S. claim on frozen funds. Iran's chief negotiator, Galibaf, has denied that the country's unfrozen assets would be used to buy agricultural products from the U.S. His remarks add to conflicting interpretations of the interim U.S.-Iran peace deal signed on the 17th of June. America's false claims on our frozen assets will buy their agriculture. Interesting, the only crop we're harvesting is what we planted, or what you planted. Decades of mistrust, it's organic, abundant, and homegrown, Galif wrote on X Thursday. But apparently the U.S. only exports GMOs, soybeans, broken promises, and trash talks, he added. They don't want any GMOs. The MOU cited by the media, the U.S. agreed that an unspecified amount of frozen assets under sanctions would be made fully available for use by Iran upon implementation of the deal. So guess what? They're not even holding that to be true. So there you go. There's a good reason why the strait is still closed. Strategic dilemma of Persian Gulf states between American pressure and Iran's post-war leverage. What has emerged from the imposed war was not merely a reaffirmation of Iran's defense capabilities, but a fundamental reordering of power dynamics that the Arab-Persian Gulf states appear, at best, reluctant to acknowledge and, at worst, actively seek to undermine. Like everything else, though, the U.S. is never going to defeat Iran unless they actually do nuclear strikes. And if they do that, the whole region is going to be on fire because, well, like everything else, though, that's the Third World War. The individual and collective positions of these states, Oman's imprudent unilateral foray into the strait navigation, Qatar's uncharacteristic intervention as Kuwait's deterrent of Iranian military personnel, and Bahrain's intensified internal repression of pro-Iran citizens are not isolated incidents of diplomatic clumsiness. They constitute a desperate and short-sighted strategy that seeks to test the boundaries of a new regional order while simultaneously placating a U.S. that is desperately attempting to restore its eroded influence through proxy pressure on Iran. The actions of the Persian Gulf Cooperation Council states over recent weeks betray a coordinated effort evidently encouraged by D.C. to complicate Iran's strategic calculus and attempt to reestablish leverage ahead of any potential negotiations. Yet each maneuver reveals a deeper structural weakness and a dangerous misreading of the transformed regional balance. So like everything else though, they're going to find themselves in total chaos very soon, because you know that the U.S. can't even defend them, especially when Iran retaliates. And like everything else though, there's going to be a new broker in town, and it ain't the U.S. Damage to key U.S. bases in Gulf so extensive the Pentagon may not rebuild them. They can't rebuild. And the scriptures tell you they will rebuild, but I will throw down. Basically, even if they were to, they're going to get taken out anyways, because it's time for Babylon the Great to fall. And next week is the 4th of July. It's 250th anniversary. And we suspect a false flag may be coming, because that's what they're telegraphing. Israeli state is saying that all these things are going to happen if you don't support Israel. But each week and a month that passes since the start of Trump's Operation Epstein Fury, more and more reports have come out revealing the massive extent of damage to U.S. military facilities in the West Asian region, based on Iran's retaliation across the region. More fresh reporting in the Wall Street Journal once again adds confirmation to this, referencing satellite imagery which shows far more serious damage. A key naval base in Bahrain than the U.S. has publicly acknowledged. Well, of course they're not going to acknowledge it, because it went really bad. The U.S. Navy base in Bahrain was repeatedly targeted between late February and June. Strikes that got through caused extensive damage, according to Wall Street Journal analysts. And boy, Trump is mad because they're telling the truth. Social media footage and interviews with current and former service members damage the Pentagon hasn't publicly acknowledged hit hard where the command headquarters and at least a dozen other buildings alongside with 2 satellite communication terminals. The military said no one was killed at the base known as Naval Support Activity Bahrain, and that strikes didn't significantly impact operations. The U.S. evacuated most personnel but has kept a small staff on the ground. Yeah, that's what they're saying. Because they wouldn't lie to you, would they? We'll take a look at it. I mean, this is doesn't look like it does a whole lot. Yeah, not a whole lot. There's more of a still image than anything else. Iran's top military command warns of response to any Israeli threat. So, like everything else, though, its posturing, its maneuvering across Lebanon, all that will soon be met. And plus, they're still threatening Iran anyways. We are considering the movements and presence of military aircraft of the terrorist Zionist regime in the skies of some neighboring countries towards Iran to be a dangerous act and a threat against the Islamic Republic of Iran. The Khatam al-Anaba Central Headquarters said in a statement issued on Friday. The statement stressed that if America is unable to contain and control the Zionist regime, Islamic Republic of Iran will not tolerate any threat against it and considers its right to respond to these dangerous actions. So, pretty much so. You know that a response is about to happen. You notice that Iraq and Turkey's leaders are there. One of them from Ankara anyways is there. So these are other areas where Israeli state said they're going after Turkey anyways. So it's no surprise. Iran has delivered formal ultimatum to the Iraqi government and the semi-autonomous Kurdish regional government, demanding they take immediate action against terrorist anti-Iran groups based in northern Iraq. This message conveyed through the Iraqi ambassador to Tehran. gives Baghdad and Erbil two options: detain and extradite the group's leaders, and options to Tehran to face legal proceedings for terrorist activities, or facilitate their relocation to a third country with a specified time frame. Tehran has made it clear it considers the continued presence of these and activity of these groups in Iraq's Kurdistan region a direct threat to its national security, and expects a decisive response from both the federal government and Kurdish authorities, the sources said. So, yeah, this is where it's starting to come along Turkey's borders, but the common enemy is the YPG and PKK. That's something that they share in common with Tehran, with Iran. So Ankara, aka Turkey, is not going to object to Iran taking action there. Because Turkey has taken action many times to the PKK and YPG. You see, this whole thing is escalating. Iran warns ships against using unauthorized routes in the Strait. Which again, it sounded like there were responses, clashes between Iran and the U.S. So we'll look further into that as I try to get more articles on that. But for right now, this is what's going on. Iran warned on Thursday that ships transiting the Strait must use only routes approved by designated Iranian authorities following the attack on a vessel off the coast of Oman. So this is, and they say that the U.S. has responded to that, so it actually is in here. The Persian Gulf Strait Authority, established by Iran to manage the strait, said in a post on X that the transit outside routes designated by Iran will not be covered by the guarantee of safe passage. So you go through anything that's not of them, there's consequences, right? It added that any consequences arising from passage through unauthorized routes shall be the responsibility of the owner, operating vessel commander. They're just pretty much telling you that unless we're the ones guiding it, you definitely ain't gotten guarantees, and you're taking risks. You're taking huge chances. He said the decision followed by attack on a ship in the Gulf of Oman on Thursday after it had passed through the strait. So, they say that Trump responded to that, but here's what's going on in Lebanon, which is part of the deal. King Bibi and Katz say Israeli state will remain in Lebanon, Syria, and Gaza without time limit. Yeah, just like the video we went into with Stu Peters. Israeli leaders speaking during graduation for combat officers also threatened to attack Iran again. So there we go. That's why Iran is responding the way they are, because it's not just through the YPG and all that. The Israeli state is directly saying they're going to attack Iran. Israeli Prime Minister and Defense Minister have said that troops will remain indefinite in southern Lebanon and Syria and the Gaza Strip. They were both speaking at a graduation for combat officers in southern Israeli state on Thursday. We dominate southern Lebanon from the summit of Beaufort, and we will remain there as long as required in the security zone. King Bibi said we do not intend to withdraw from it. Katz said the Israeli military will remain in security zones in Lebanon, in Syria, and in Gaza without time limits. So you can see that this memorandum of understanding is going nowhere. And then this is what's going on in Syria, which is totally controlled by Mossad as well, because that's who ISIS is. Fears for freedom of expression as Syria announces new restriction on media content. So, like everything else, though, pretty much there's censorship there. Because, of course, man, they're controlled by the Israeli state. And the Israeli state is eventually going to control what you can see over here, too. You already know that they run the internet. They run everything you see. And eventually, they're making their cases. Yeah, a lot of us are going to be brought up on charges, It's just the way that they roll, They don't like information getting out. And they bought out TikTok, but, like everything else, though, they're saying they want to shut down TikTok as well, even though they own it. Why? Because there's still information coming out. Syria's Information Ministry has announced 6 prohibited categories for publishing and media, drawing scrutiny over their broad range and potential for abuse. So like everything else, though, you can't say that things are bad in Syria, just like you can't say things are bad in Gaza. The Syrian Ministry of Information has made an announcement prohibiting the publication of false news and other offensive content on social media. raising concerns about freedom of expression in the country following the fall of Bashar al-Assad. So like everything else, though, it's a police state. And you can't say anything bad. ISIS is good. Oh, wait, they call him Hayat al-Sham. Similar false news provisions have also been criticized elsewhere in the region. Yeah, pretty much, though. The Syrian news and all that, it's all nothing but ISIS propaganda. It's nothing but Israeli media in Syria. When it was under Bashar al-Assad, you actually got a lot of truth out of the Syria news. But now, you ain't getting any information whatsoever about what's really going on over there. Just like it's hard to get information about what's going on in Gaza. And most people that do report there are killed by the Israelis. Same thing going on in Syria. In fact, it's so bad in Syria that, they don't even get a chance to even record at all. With both the Israeli state and ISIS controlling it, which are the same thing. Yeah, they ain't got a chance. Oh, ISIS is good. Hayat al-Sham is good. Al-Jalani, good. Israeli military terrorists engaged in multiple operations in and around the town of Al-Rifid in Quneitra governorate in southern Syria, with the latest operations centering around them infiltrating the town and detaining a number of farmers and shepherds, questioning them, and ultimately releasing them. So, catch and release, because like everything else, though, these Israelis are showing that they're in control of Syria. Israeli state runs Syria. So you see what's going to cause the destruction to Damascus. Al-Rafid was also the site of a report yesterday saying Israeli terrorists established a new checkpoint in the area between the town and the nearby farms, a checkpoint that is limiting farmers' access to areas reportedly. So they're basically stealing all their crops and just, continuing to go after anybody that was once for Bashar al-Assad, So you can see what's going on there, and like everything else, though, we know we're in the times of unprecedented trouble, right? So got one more here before I close this out. As we go into this, time and time again, Syria is a hotbed. It's always been a hotbed. And the destruction coming to Damascus. Yet, at the same time, the Israeli state is also going to be demolished, right? The Zionists. So it's quite obvious that Russia is going to take an offensive against both Syria and the Israeli state. And why? Because it's no longer under Bashar al-Assad. It's not the government of Bashar al-Assad anymore. Pretty much that's ISIS in Syria. So it's really looking like, even though, they're trying to reestablish base there and everything with the Syrian government, and he kind of plays both sides, at the very end, it's looking like Syria is going to still be on the side of the Zionist entity, or either that or the Zionist entity eventually takes out Al-Jalani and they occupy Damascus, which you can see how much Israeli activity is in southern Syria, right? So they're continuing to take land, and they're that close to getting Damascus if they want it. So, like everything else, though, the day of destruction is coming, and that is the day of the Lord, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. It's nearing. These are the areas that are going to get the first taste of World War III, the Third World War that cometh quickly. But through everything else, though, the MOTB will be mandated. And for those that are not teaching what the MOTB really is, the implantable device that will come, guess what? You're a worker of iniquity just right there. Just right there, you're in contempt with the Most High because He told you to warn them. To warn them about this. This is ultimately what Great Millstone has definitely been founded on alone. Alone, if anything that Great Millstone has done, we have warned you about the MOTB to not take it and what it was to begin with. We didn't flip-flop on the subject. It is the micro C-hip that will be implanted. It will be mandated for all in order to even participate. We go into those videos over and over again. So, we're not teaching heresies, We're not the workers of iniquity. But anybody else not teaching in line with what we're teaching is a worker of iniquity. And you're going to be caught up in World War III because you can see where it is. And definitely everything is in that region. Iran is right there. Persia, Ethiopia, Libya with them, right? Syria. is definitely mentioned in this chapter, as it is in Isaiah chapter 17 and Jeremiah 49. But also here in 2 Ezra chapter 16, it reads, "Woe unto thee, Babylon and Asia," you know, because, well, that's West Asia, right? "Woe unto thee, Egypt and Syria." And who's modern day Egypt? America, right? Babylon. You see, Babylon's named twice here. "Gird up yourselves with sackcloth and garments of hair, and bewail your children, and lament, for your destruction is at hand." You know, in other words, what's coming, you know, is ultimate destruction, nuclear destruction. Because listen to how it's worded: "A sword is sent upon you." And what's that modern day sword? ICBMs, right? You know, that's the ultimate sword. "And who is he that may turn it back?" Yeah, these things are missile locked. They are locked in. "A fire is sent upon you, and who is he that may quench it? Evils are sent upon you, and who is he that may drive them away?" In other words, pretty much though, no, it ain't going away. It ain't going to be rebuilt. You know, pretty much you're going to be destroyed in that day, in that hour. The day of the Lord, Yahweh Ba'Hashem Yahweh Shai, in that valley of decision. "May one drive away a hungry lion in the wood, or may one quench the fire and stubble when it hath once begun to burn." You know, it's rhetorical. You know, letting you know that once they get set off, that's it. "May one turn again the arrow that is shot of a strong archer." And these modern day arrows is talking about ICBMs. "The Lord Yahweh sendeth the evils, and who shall drive them away? A fire shall go forth from his wrath, and who is he that may quench it?" See, we got this promise from Yahweh Shai, and particularly that those that are not turned away are not going to be caught up in this fire that's coming. The ultimate destruction, because he's coming to gather his elect. You know? But when he says, "Depart from me, you workers of iniquity," you're going to be caught up in that wrath. Ultimately, you're going to be just consumed by nuclear destruction, nuclear fire, and by the fire coming from them chariots. Because, hey, this is the end. This is the end of Esau Edom. And he's only going to be taking a third with him. And the rest are going to be caught up in the destruction. You know, especially those that took the MOTB. You know, that had poor shepherds. You know, that misled them. Well, they got a lot to answer to in that day too. So like everything else though, you don't want to be a worker of iniquity. You know, you need to get away from those that aren't teaching that the MOTB is the implantable microchip. And that's coming quickly. So hopefully this has all been edifying. Again, got one more. Earthquakes in diverse places, right? Because it's happened already. A major earthquake in Venezuela. You know, again, you know, the Most High ultimately is doing this, whether Esau used direct energy weapons, which it's looking like that may be the case, but the Most High is in charge of Esau. So hopefully this has been edifying. Then I will say, Brakah the Yahweh, Brakah the Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Rakal Kadosh, Wa Abal Babal. Brakatum to Yehovah elect. Shalom.
Alright, Shalom. I call Lord Allah, Yahweh Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Rakal Kodash. The line is Apostle Elder Great Moonstone, Shalom to Yehovah elect. This is where you call from GMS Cleveland Camp to a little edifying lesson. Getting straight into it. This is 2 Ezra 9:1. He answered me then and said, "Measure thou the time diligently in itself, and when thou seest part of the signs pass, which I have told thee before, then shalt thou understand, that at the very same time wherein the highest will begin to visit the world which he made. Therefore, when there shall be seen earthquakes and uproars of the people in the world, then shalt thou well understand that the Most High spake of those things from the days that were before thee, even from the beginning. For like as all that is made in the world at the beginning and an end, and the end is manifest." You see? So Yahweh Ba'Hashem Shai is made us privy, the prophets privy to what's going to happen. Okay, the prophets speak the words to the believers of what's going to happen in end times. Okay, that's one of the major things, these major earthquakes. And we see Yahweh Ba'Hashem Shai is recently turned up. I got some videos to play. Especially, there's multiple earthquakes. You got one, was it in California, I believe. And then you got the, it was like you got one in Japan that was kind of mid, but the main one was in Venezuela. So that's what the lesson's going to be on. I got some clips to play. It says the breaking news of Venezuela earthquake death toll can go above 10,000. And they're already saying there's 50,000 people missing. All right, so really 50,000 people missing. Okay, well, a huge portion of that is going to be dead. Maybe think about Psalm 91. I can grab it right before I play these clips. Because they were in times, how about Shai is going to be taking people out. And that's number, man. Call them spirits back, right? This is Psalm 91, verse 7. It says, 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand. It shall not come nigh thee. It says, only with thou eyes shall I behold and see the war of the wicked. So the elect, Lord willing, part of that number, you're going to have a spiritual head of protection. How about, Shai can send the angels, okay, including the chief archangel Michael himself, to protect the elect in his time of trouble, man. Again, we always say, it's not just Esau come down having great wrath, okay? Which it's not just Esau with his troops, with his military, with enforcing the microchip, the RFID, the market beast, the RFID microchip.
But Shai and the angels too.
Earthquakes, tornadoes. You got WB tornadoes, and it was in Indiana, I believe. Right? Earthquakes, tornadoes, hail with fire. Hail made with fire, like you did with the Egyptians. Okay, turn up these wild beasts. Okay, sending angels to execute judgment. Okay, putting spirits on people to take each other out. There's gonna be so much going on at one time, man. I said one of the major things is gonna be earthquakes. It's really part of the signs and the prophecies, right? The Lord he said 1,000 shall fall at thy side and 10,000 at thy right hand. So we're going to be calling up spirits by the millions, really, by the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, to the millions. Okay, the Lord's going to completely wipe Babylon great off on the face of the earth, man. Okay, but like I said before, even the missiles here, it's going to be tens of thousands of spirits going back to the spirit world. Lord, we're getting ready for the time of the Lord's mass major judgment, right, of the earth. It says, verse 9, because thou hast made the Lord Yahweh Shai, which is my refuge, even the Most High thy habitation, there shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling, but he shall give his angels charge over thee to keep thee in all thy ways. You see, so Lord, it's like I said, some angels to protect the elect. Let's go to this. So they play these clips, man. People was terrified, man, right? Venezuela was a heavy concentration of Asherites, okay? The tribe of Asher, the so-called the Venezuelans, okay? Hey, Yahweh Shai, he's angry with the wicked of our people who refuse to repent, man. Okay, so the Lord took out a lot of Israelites in the judgment.
Aquí estoy a 20 metros del edificio, empieza a temblar y paro el carro y se cayó el edificio donde estaba el semáforo. Yo estaba parado ahí. Wow.
So you got critical infrastructure being fucked up. You got, like say, you got whole collapsed buildings right here. You go this one. So it's at first it was 10K, now it says catastrophic earthquake strikes Venezuela, sparking fears of up to 100K deaths. All right. See, look at this shit. Like people saying, it look like a fucking war zone. Like Esau hit this bitch with a fucking missile. But that's another thing people are speculating. Esau's heart machine, the Lord gave the devil the ability to cause these different quote-unquote natural disasters and shit. I wouldn't be surprised if Esau did that. Like people point out how first they kidnapped the president, they took, they took the oil, and now they're doing this, whatever. I wouldn't be surprised. But in the days, how about Shai? If the Lord did allow Esau to do this, he's just doing it to add Esau's pride, fatten him up for slaughter. Esau's continuing to think he's in control. He's God. That's a godlike power, man. He's going to cause earthquakes and tornadoes and send fire down from heaven, like it talks about Revelation 13, at your will. Okay, with a push of a button, all right? Like the Malibu fires in California. What was that, a year ago, whatever long ago that was, all right? The major fires, you really see the beam getting shot down from the satellite, okay, to manipulate the weather. They got a whole movie about that, the movie Geostorm. It showed that, how Esau was able to manipulate the weather and shit. Okay, it's all a science to it the Lord created. The Lord opens Esau's mind up to certain things, okay, again, to boast him up, to be proud, man, because it's all again, like I said, fattening Esau for slaughter. So whether it was Esau or whether it was the Lord directly, either way, it's still Yahweh Shai, man. So we see the Lord judging, right? It should look like a fucking Iraq, bro, like a war zone. There's hella people under that rubble, man. Everybody didn't make it out. Slacking for the background, though. That's a fucking stove. But forgive me. Like I said, the people didn't make it out. I said, oh, it's over 50K missing already. Guess what? It's gonna be more. Okay, look at this. Whole building's fucked up. Right? There's a whole lot of infrastructure messed up, man. So this is reporting the news real quick. I'm sure the death toll will go up. So I may make a part 2 where once like the official numbers come out, but it's still rising. So with that, give all praise on glory to how about Shai Hashem Kakadash, the Bonds Apostle, Great Millstone, Shalom to Hope for Let Me, and about Ball, Kwame Shroud, Shalom.